Every time I watch that footage, it puts a big smile on my face. When you get reactions like that from a game, one, you know you're in good company, and two, you know you're playing a great game. That was my best mate Duff there with Nathan Russell, whose name may ring a bell to a few of you because Nathan's one of the hosts from the Australian Hebe Gamers podcast. And I'm always really happy when we can all get together and get some games in because it doesn't happen nearly as often as I'd like. I actually live about 200 kilometres away from those blokes. But when the stars do align and we all meet up for some games, we just have an absolute blast, playing many different styles of games, but they're a great bunch of gamers to pull out some party games like Aargh, Tect, the caveman architect game. Aargh, Tect is a game for between 4 to 8 players. The players in the games will be divided into 2 teams. On each team, there will be one architect and the other players in the teams are going to be builders. The architect has a card with a picture of a structure made out of blocks. And he's going to have to communicate to the builders how to construct the picture on that card. The problem is, players can only communicate using caveman language like ugangle gungle, or body language, you know, waving their heads, arms above their heads and so forth, or more expressive caveman language using a blow-up club. Come on, the minute I heard about this component, I knew what my next purchase would be. Let's have a closer look at the game Aargh, Tect.
There is currently no English edition of Aargh, Tect, and the game is printed in German. There is an English translation available on Board Game Geek, and the English rules translation is very clear and actually quite funny in parts, so it's a good read. There is also an English translation available for the crib sheets, which will be used by players to communicate and understand caveman language. So let's have a look at the crib sheet. The crib sheet is the same on both sides, so that the architect can refer to it and so too can the builders. Here is a basic setup of Aargh, Tect, and the architect will sit on one side of the table or stand, and he'll be instructing the builders opposite, and in the middle of the table is a crib sheet. The blocks are placed with the builders, and the club is given to the architect. Each architect will take a card, and you're ready to go. So let's have a lesson in caveman language. Okay, each block is going to have some sort of gesture associated with it. For example, if the architect was swinging his hips from side to side, it would mean he's trying to communicate that the action will require the green block. Putting his hands above his head would mean that he's saying that it has something to do with the red block. If he did this whilst yelling ugangu, it would mean that you take the red block. If he said ugangu ugangu, it means he's telling you to put away the red block, and so on. That's how the crib sheet works. If you did the action correctly, the architect will hit you in the head once with the club. If you did it incorrectly, he's going to hit you in the head twice. If the architect made a mistake himself when giving the orders, he's going to hit himself in the head with the club. And that's how the game works, basically. The first team to complete their structure will have their structure examined by the opposing team. Each structure is worth a certain amount of points. If the team is found to have made some mistakes, they're going to find some negative points in there. Now, the rules recommend that the block should be divided evenly between the builders if possible, and you're not supposed to touch a block that isn't yours. And that works well, it really does. However, the rules in this game should just be a guideline. Having fun is what this game is about. In that footage earlier, that was Duff fighting with Nathan over who would place the last winning piece, the last piece of the puzzle. And Duff technically shouldn't have done that. That shouldn't occur in the game, but, you know, I think bonus points should be awarded for such behaviour. I think he really got into the spirit of the game, and it was a lot of fun. So, as I said, the rules, you know, bit of a guideline there, obviously. Let's see if you can follow my directives, and I'm going to, you know, be prepared. I'm going to embarrass myself, but, you know, it's all for gaming. What the hell? Let's get into it.
Ugangu. Ugangu. Ugangu.
So I think now you can better understand the madness that's going to occur in front of you. It's a lot of fun to watch.
Now, I shouldn't have to state the obvious here, but I will anyway. This is going to be a very, 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 very group-dependent game. How much fun you have during a game of Aargh Tect is largely dependent on your group's behaviour. But as you saw earlier, fortunately I do have access to a great group for these kinds of games, and Aargh Tect was an absolute ride. Now, I don't get to game with that group quite as often as I'd like, so I don't expect Aargh Tect to hit the table weekly or anything like that. I love party games a lot, but they don't hit the table all that often. I don't always have access to a large group or the right group for party games. And I mean, this one in particular with this thing is not going to be suitable for a lot of people. So on top of party games in general not getting played a whole heap, I've got to be a bit choosy who I play this one with. However, I attend a gaming club with Duff, Nathan, Marty and everyone at the club just about every month, and I'm pretty sure if I show up without Aargh Tect now that they've had a taste of it, they simply won't let me in without it. It was a big, big hit, to the point where my best mate Duff just purchased another 6 blow-up clubs like this one from England so that each participant in the game could have one, which is going to be chaos and insane, but a lot of fun at the same time. He's also organising a club event based on Aargh Tect. I don't know all the details of it yet, but I'm really looking forward to whatever it is he's planning, and I know that it may be the case that we'll have to order another copy of the game, so it's probably going to be big too with a lot of players, so I'm really looking forward to that. Now, during our games of Aargh Tect, everyone was having fun, no doubt about it, but not everyone at the table was having as much fun as others. Some were really into it, yelling, jumping around and grunting and so forth, and just generally getting into the theme. And I think others just enjoyed watching other people do that. To get into it yourself, I think this is a game where you're going to have to be really comfortable with the group that you're playing with and be able to express yourself without holding back or feeling embarrassed by your actions. It's much like an RPG in that sense. Sometimes when I'm participating in an RPG, or storytelling game for that matter, with people I don't know too well, I find it harder to get into the character and really, really, really let loose. And it's the same here. You just, if you can get into it, it's a lot of fun, a great deal of fun. And watching it's fun, but you know, nowhere near as much. If you can get into it and everyone else is into it, it's just, it's so much fun. In fact, after our first round of play, both Nathan and I were the architects, and we really got into it. And afterwards, our necks were aching. I think it was probably a combination of laughter, yelling, jumping around, and frustration. Crikey! It's harder than you might think from both sides of the table. And I for one, am glad that they included these clubs, because at times you really do want to hit the builders. You know, I said, oh, gungle, gungle, not manungle, manungle. What's wrong with you? Just put it there. Whack, whack. Love it. More games should have this. Now, with all the yelling and laughter in a club situation, I think we may have annoyed some other gamers, so probably keep that in mind. It can get really noisy. I had to do quite a bit of hunting for this one, and I picked up my copy from a gaming store in France. The game cost new around $75 Australian, including shipping. People might think that's expensive, however I dare say if it was on Australian gaming store shelves it'd probably be more expensive than that, and I for one am really happy with it. I think I got my money's worth, and it's definitely good for a lot of laughs. This is a game, and I never say this, but I think this is a game that everyone should have a look into at least. It's just, we had a lot of fun, and just, I was sore from laughter, so that's saying something. Thanks for watching another episode of Castelli Reviews, and I hope to see you all again soon.
Tarango a kango.